Tax day is coming.
Oh, no.
But if you sign up for Robinhood Gold's IRA with a 3% match, you can get up to $195 for the 2023 tax year.
Oh, yeah.
Sign up at Robinhood.com/boost by tax day to get the biggest contribution match on the market. Subscription fees apply.
Investing involves risk. 3% match requires gold for 1 year from first match. Must keep IRA for 5 years. Robinhood Financial, LLC, member SIPC.
Welcome to the Dragon's Lair.
Hello and welcome to the Dragon's Lair podcast, the podcast all things Dragons RFC and rugby in the region. I'm Jamie. Hope you're all well, and with me, as always, is my co-host Gavin Thomas. How are we, Gav?
I'm very well, Jamie. I'm very well. Survived an assassination attempt in a hotel in Kent. By assassination attempt, I mean someone dropped porridge on me, but you know, at the time it felt like an assassination attempt.
Was it boiling hot porridge as well?
It was.
Did
yeah.
it hurt? Oh no! Oh dear. Oh. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
The only space shirt I had for work was this ridiculous floral one as well. So it was, it was quite the day.
Oh dear. Okay then. Well, look, we are doing something a little bit different on the pod this week. So this is going to be a view from the opposition podcast. So as you know, we've had a former player and a current player on the pod, but this week our guest is a supporter from the opposition who will help us preview our home clash against Leinster on Sunday. And if any of you have ever listened to the excellent Harping on Rugby pod, you'll be familiar with him. Welcome to the pod, Mr. Tom Coleman. How are we, Tom?
Good, Jamie. Good, Gavin. Delighted to get the invite, lads, and chat rugby across the Irish Sea.
Absolutely.
Yeah, much appreciated the invite. Yeah, thank you.
Not a problem at all. Thank you for joining us. So we've got a lot to pack in to this week's pod. Unfortunately, we are going to have to talk about that Munster game, I'm afraid. So it was Munster 45, Dragons 14. So as we know, the Dragons were quite depleted heading into this game. They had 20 players unavailable to them. Well, it's actually 21 if you count Gonzalo Bertrand, because he's still on World Cup duty. Well, he was being rested for World Cup duty. So they lost 7 players to Wales, which is more than any other region, to the Barbars game. And on top of that, they had 13 players on the injury list. So we knew it was always going to be tough. We were coming into it very depleted. But we went out there and we had youngsters making their debut. So Wales under-20s captain Ryan Woodman and young tight head Luke Yendo were making their first starts for the club. And then we had the likes of Ewan Rosser, Nathan Evans, and Barney Langton-Cryer. I like that name, Barney Langton-Cryer. All made. It sounds made up, doesn't it?
He sounds like he flies Spitfires in World War II rather than playing for Dragons.
That they all made their club debuts. Now, to be fair, Munster, they did have a young team out as well. Munster fans have been quite keen to push that point. And they are URC champions for a very good reason. And let's be honest, it's like Leinster, isn't it? There's no such thing as a weakened Munster team. They're always going to be strong. And they did have the likes of Shane Daly, Rory Scannell, Craig Casey, and John Ryan in their team. So the game kicks off and they didn't get off to the best of starts, did it? Just 2 minutes in, Angus O'Brien goes off injured. We will talk about that later because unfortunately we do have an injury update on Angus. And scrum half, Rodri Williams, was making his 100th appearance for the club and he comes on and plays a fullback. And to be fair to him, he actually had a decent game today. I thought he did quite well at fullback, all things considered. Made a couple of nice line breaks.
I panicked a little when Angus went off, but I think the long-term issue is a problem. But yeah, Rodri did a decent job there, didn't he? You know, it's kind of a swirly Saturday night in Cork. You know, it's not going to be easy into the high ball there.
No, at all. He did well, in fairness. Fair play to him. So Dragons found themselves 17-0 down after just 20 minutes. You're thinking, oh gosh, here we go. But they did get themselves back into the game thanks to a Ryan Woodman try. Lovely crossfield kick from Dane Blacker. Really was well executed and great vision. And it was well carried and scored by Woodman. So that made it 17-7 at half time, which wasn't bad. Dragons were still in the game. It was a scrappy first half, but that suited the Dragons. And then, unfortunately, the second half. And once Thomas Ahern scored Munster's bonus point try after 47 minutes, it was mostly one-way traffic there, I'm afraid. However, Dragons did have scoring opportunities in that second half, but we didn't actually take any of them until Aki Saului scored a try right at the end through a driving maul, which is always pleasing to see from a Dragons point of view, isn't it, Gav? We love seeing good scrums and driving mauls because it just doesn't happen at the Dragons.
No, we haven't used the maul as an attacking platform, and we've talked about it this season being, well, is this a season the maul isn't it? And it was good to see Aki scoring that. I think, and going back to what you said about Dane Blacker's crossfield kick, he was almost Carlos Spencer-esque outside of his boots, little curl. It was at that point I was thinking, do you know what? I reckon we could win this. I don't know why I thought that.
You never thought that, surely. No way.
I was 2 beers in. Maybe I was a little, but I thought, yeah, there's something here. But yeah,
Yeah. So overall, Gav, what was your take on the game then? It was to be expected, wasn't it? Really. I mean, it could have been worse because if you remember the last time we went out, I mean, we were playing in Limerick. We did lose 64-3, so it wasn't quite that bad, was it? But
But right, so I'm going to see the positives now. Kind of, it could have been better though, because
yes.
I think there were a number of opportunities we left out on the field. We never should have left out on the field. There were scoring opportunities. There were about 3 or 4 times we were in their 22, and it was just our last pass, that last decision that let us down again. And that that is becoming a bit of a
theme,
a theme for the season. Can get in the 22, can hold on to possession, kicking well. The kicking game is still decent, but then it's that decision. It's what happens in the 22 that all goes a bit wrong.
Yeah.
And I think losing Angus was an issue. I like Will Reid, but
I thought he was okay. I thought Will Reid had he's learning on the job. He's young, isn't he? He's learning this craft. I think we do have to appreciate that he is a young fly half learning this craft. But I thought he was okay.
But I don't know who's going to take hold of the game for us, though, Jamie. Who is going to say this is what we're going to do? Like a kind of Dan Bigger-esque figure. This is what we're doing, and we're doing it whether or not you want to kind of approach. Because it seems to be there's lots of individual fault, but no one's really driving those things. And they're saying every time we get in the 22, we come away with points.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, Gav. It's a very valid concern. We will talk about the fly-off situation a bit later. Now, Tom, you saw this game, I understand. So what was your takeaways from the game as neutral?
Yeah, look, to be fair, given, as you outlined, Dragons, injury profile and the players which were missing for that Barbers game, winning in Cork at the best of times is very difficult for any team. So, unfortunately, I didn't give the Dragons much hope. But that said, I do sort of agree with Gavin. I think once Woodman scored that try, Munster were the happier team to see the half-time whistle, because Dragons were getting a lot of territory in the Munster half. And there was some good play there. I thought, Blacker was playing well at that stage, and Woodman and Basham were making a bit of ground. Munster weren't getting it on their own way. Now, I think once Roundtree got into his dressing room, you could tell he probably chewed the arse off them, and as you say, Thomas Ahern got an early try, and that sort of just knocked whatever confidence the Dragons had built up coming up to half time, and all the sort of lack of confidence that was there with missing players and stuff sort of came home to roost at that stage. And at that stage, the best the Dragons probably get out of it is exposing these players like Woodman and Yendel and stuff, just that type of game, and get that experience. So look, it'll pay for it in the long term. But there was times in the game where Munster didn't look comfortable, and the Dragons were causing them issues in certain parts of the game. But the result at the end probably was never in doubt either, given the selection for the game and who was available for you, and the injuries, as you said. O'Brien went off after a couple of minutes, and you had to rejig your back line. To try and accommodate 9 and 15. So that even the most equipped team would struggle with that if you have to start putting your scrum half back to fullback. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I did, and he did play well actually. Williams played well. He made a lovely break. I think it was him made a cracking break in the first half
Yeah. It
to
was Williams.
get his deep into Munster territory. So it was there's signs there, but really it's at this stage for the Dragons, it's a bit of consistency, and they just need their players back to give them that. You just need a little bit more momentum of selection. Even the best, the deepest of squads will struggle to try and get momentum with so many out.
Yeah, and the point
absolutely.
you made, I think, Tom, as well, about Woodman and Basham, they played well, particularly in the first half. I think, I go on about every week. Big fan of Di Flan as a coach, but his insistence on selecting second rows at 6 drives me absolutely spare. But having an actual 6 in Woodman playing in the back row, you can see the impact of it. He's carrying hard, he's hitting rucks. That's what you want from a back row. There's lots of promise there in Ryan Woodman.
And he's a unit. I forgot how big he is. I remember him looking at Ireland under-20s and the Welsh under-20s, and he did stand out physically on the pitch, but even against a fairly sizable Munster team with the couple of big lads there in Coombs and Ahern and stuff, he's definitely he's a unit. You can see him making his impression with Wales in the next 18 months or so. He's such a physical presence.
Yeah. I thought some of Munster's tries were quite soft, if I'm being honest. And I think a better team would have. I mean, Coombs' try. I mean, he just shrugged off, 3 boys like that. That's, you got to bring him down. I know he's a big lad. He's a very strong ball carrier, but I just felt a few of their tries, some of the defence was left a bit wanting. 22 missed tackles. It's not great to say. That's the URC website, 22 compared to Munster's 11. But one stat that did please me, considering how, our discipline has been a bit of a problem into this season and also last season, we only conceded 4 penalties. So that's pretty impressive. It's very un-Dragons-like, actually, to be fair. But we only conceded 4 penalties. That's according to the USC stats. I saw a comment on the Dragons forum from a bloke who said the score didn't reflect the game. And I thought it did. But I can see what he means, because you talked about it there, and Tom, we did have opportunities in that second half to come away with a try bonus point. We did get into Munster's 22 quite a bit, but it's the accuracy, isn't it? And the execution, taking the wrong pass, panicking, not knowing what to do. And there was a moment that stood out for me in the second half. I don't know if you boys remember this. So we was in Munster's 22 and they were giving away a lot of penalties. We kicked to the corner. 3 times we kicked to the corner. And on the 3rd time, I was watching a game on S4C and they had Andy Moore and James Hook on commentary. They're saying they got to come away with something now, Dragons. They got to impression the points, got to come away with something. And sat there thinking exactly the same thing. And you can guess what happened. It didn't happen. We came away with nothing because Bradley Roberts was just short of the try line. And it's those moments, isn't it? Good teams, when they have those opportunities, when they got the opposition under the cosh and they kick to the corner, and Munster or Leinster, they're going over that try line. But with us, we make it look so hard and difficult, and we toil, and we just don't turn pressure into points. And the attack isn't clicking, Gav. There's something about our attack. Like, people kept saying, oh, you got a good backline going to Munster. That's like near full strength. I'm like, yeah, but something's not right at the moment. Something's not clicking. And I can't put my finger on what it is.
It lacks leadership and it lacks direction for me. And nobody is grabbing hold of it. If you think of the best teams, and we're never going to be one of the best teams. I'm not insane,
No.
But if you think of any team that functions reasonably well, they have somebody who is pulling the strings. Leinster have Sexton. Bigger has always done the job for Wales. There is, and it doesn't have to be the 10, but there is somebody who is grabbing hold of the game by the scruff of the neck continually and saying, we will play like this and we will keep playing like this and the decision making will look like this. And nobody does that, because we've talked about this. Against Edinburgh, a game we should have won, we lost our heads. We made poor decisions.
Yeah.
And I really like Will Reid. But Will Reid's decision making isn't where it needs to be right now. But where are other options?
Yeah, that's right. There's something to be said for an experienced 10, Tom, isn't there?
There is, yeah. I think as well, if you look at the Dragons, and I coach a little bit over here in Ireland at youth level. If you're in a run of results where you're losing, it doesn't matter what grade you're at. It might only be 2% of your brain there's a little bit of desperation there to get across the line. And you could see Zebra in the first couple of weeks were guilty of that as well. They coughed up a couple of wins that they should have beat Ulster. And I think I can't remember who they played in the second game. Whereas if you're with a team that you're winning fairly regularly, you trust the system because you know it's worked previously. Yeah. Dragons are in that sort of transition thing of not getting a run of results, and then it just it doesn't mean all their play is desperate. It just means that top couple of inches in their brain is just, we have to get across the line. It's even like what Hook said in commentary. We need to score here. So rather than phase again, recycle and trust, because that it's just that depth of results isn't there for them yet to rely on, that sort of muscle memory for them to, this will work. So that's the struggle the Dragons have at the moment. I think they do have some quality players, especially the backs and the back row. And you've got a good back row, and the Dragons have plenty of really good back with great depth there. That's always going to give you some foothold in the game. The back row is the most important for me. I just think that body of results just isn't there, and it leads to that little bit of desperation about just getting across the white line. And as you say, decision making then seems bad, but really it's just that little percent where you put yourself so much under pressure to get the score because you feel you need to, rather than relying on what you've done previously and you'll score and have that patience.
Yeah,
I think that's a really interesting point, Tom, and I think it's spot on in terms of the muscle memory. And muscle memory isn't just about the physical actions. I think there is a knack in winning, isn't there? And kind of talking about your team, Leinster is a team that knows how to win. It doesn't really matter which 15, 23 players are representing Leinster at that point in time. They know how to win games. And clearly start of the season didn't go the way you wanted, but Leinster are the opposite of Dragon because they just have winning ingrained in what they do. Whereas we have probably a decade of losing rugby, and it's a difficult monkey to remove from your back, I think.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah, I think you both made really, really good points. I mean, in terms of this game, mind, I don't think we should get too head up on it like Dragon supporters, because this was a game we was never really going to win. I went on a Munster pod last week and I said, look, I just want a bonus point of some kind. If we come away with any kind of, we were never going to get a losing bonus point because we were never going to get close enough to Munster, but I was hoping for a try bonus point. And I still think had we taken some of those opportunities, we could have come away with a try bonus point, but it's not to be. And the reality is we got more important, more winnable games coming up in the calendar. So I think we can shove this one to one side, just forget about it, and look forward now to the games we got coming up. Apart from this weekend, of course, because I don't see that being a winnable game. But you know what I mean. There's going to be more opportunities to get this win, but that certainly wasn't it in Cork. It was a very difficult night. But I thought the Dragons, especially the youngsters, they did front up well, Gav, didn't they? In the circumstances,
And I know Munster fans are saying that was a young Munster team. It was, but there were also lots of very experienced guys who've played lots of winning rugby. Gavin Coombs is a great example of that. On the Gavin Coombs thing, Tom, you're clearly a fan of Irish rugby. How doesn't he get into the Irish squad?
Well, you are asking a Leinster man.
I know that. Yeah, I'm perhaps asking the wrong person, but for me, he's a kind of number 8. I love watching because he's big, rambunctious runner. Kind of quite mobile. Yeah,
I think we still not. To be honest, without making more enemies than Munster, I think he's definitely a super URC player. He doesn't stand out at the same level even in the Heineken Cup. Now he'll have big games against Toulon or stuff, but that consistency of being constantly good. And as we know, there's a step up to the Heineken Cup, and there's an even bigger step up to international rugby. There's a lot more demanded on you in a short part of time when you're with Wales camp or Irish camp where you have to get up to speed pretty quickly with all the different lineup moves and stuff like that. And Munster might say it's just Munster fans might say he just doesn't fit his profile doesn't fit the sort of Irish way, and maybe that is a fair point. But there's more demands on it. I suppose he has to do it for longer. He definitely is a super URC player. But if you look at the likes of, say, Caelan Doris is the number 8 for Ireland. If Caelan Doris was playing week in, week out in the URC, which he's not, he would stand out hugely in the same way. And then you'd probably go, well, I get why Doris is ahead of him. The fact that Doris is doing it in green and it consistently at Heineken Cup level. So there is a difference, That doesn't mean Coombs doesn't deserve his chance. He has been called up to camps. He was in the wider squad before the World Cup. He didn't make the cut. But like Wales, the Irish back row is a fairly competitive. There's very good, and then you have to be really bloody well good to get into that sort of Wales or Irish back row system. So he just has to keep doing what he's doing, and he'll deserve another chance.
Yeah, he is a fine player. I am a big fan of Coombs. Okay, so that's the Munster game done. We move on. We've got a new mailbox section now on the pod, and this is where we ask our listeners to send in their questions, their comments, etc. So this is one you can answer as well, Tom. This is a bit of fun. So Harley Worthy from the Rap Pod, he says, would you rather a world-class 10 or world-class second row? Now, we know Leinster can have a world-class 10 as second row. That's not an issue for them. It's more of an issue at the Dragons because we haven't got the budget, depth, or resources for that. But there's a question for you then, Tom. World-class 10 or world-class second row if you had the choice?
I think if it's for Dragons, I'd say the second row.
Agree. Yeah, correct answer.
It's that bulk and experience you need to just galvanize that pack, because the pack is weaker than the back line, and you win games with your forwards, so to speak, in the backs by how much. It's the old cliche. I think there's enough skill and enough depth there within the Dragons from backline to do well off the back of a better pack. So for me, it would be a second row going to Dragons. Will Rowlands.
And of course, well, I was just about to say we did have a world class.
Yeah, you did.
And then we lost him because of the bloody WRU when they freeze on contracts. So I don't know if you caught that, Gav. Harley Worthy got in touch with the pod and he asked us, would you rather a world-class 10 or world-class second row? I think I know the answer to this one from you. I know what you're going to say. Go on.
Oh, I want Will Rowland back.
You say that.
Yeah, I have no tattoos, but if I have a tattoo, it would be Will Rowland, I think. And I'm a second row myself. I like big, gnarly, horrible forwards. Yeah, world-class 10, that's fine. But, there are teams that... And what is a world-class 10 even? Andre Pollard has won 2 World Cups. Is he a world-class 10? I don't know. He's a world-class kicker. But is he a world-class 10? Is he a creator? Maybe not.
Yeah,
it's a good point. Yeah.
I think, to come back to Rowlands, Wales, had a turbulent, call it 12 or 18 months internationally. And if you were to put stock prices on all of their players, Will Rowlands is definitely one where the stock prices have risen the highest for me. From, I'm not saying he was at a low level, but he's one of Wales's key men now. He's one of Wales. Yeah. He's that good. He's come on that far, and he put his hand up for a line start in the morning. I think he would be far off that big aggressive 4.
Yeah, and he's irreplaceable.
Never played rugby until he was 20.
Really? Was it that late?
Yeah. He was a footballer he's a footballer and a basketball player.
Oh, fair play. I mean, he's irreplaceable, isn't he? Like, you hear some people say, oh, nobody's irreplaceable. Well, he is, because the Dragons will never, ever get a second row as good as Will Rowlands ever again. They'll never get a world-class lot like that. They just won't, unfortunately. That's the reality. We had him, and it wasn't our fault we lost him. It was just, it's the WRU, the freeze and con. And who can blame him? Who can blame him, in fairness?
Why don't you sign a deal with some South African team to get their players on a
do what the box sprays have done, you mean?
On a partnership basis. The Ospreys.
We did actually sign a South African second row to replace Will Rowlands, but unfortunately it fell through because his mother wasn't very well. So he decided to stay in South Africa. Dion Slabbert, his name is. I think he's now playing for the Bulls. I think he's on their he's in their squad now. So we did try to replace him. In fairness, I think he would have been a very good signing from what I saw of him. But it fell through. So we're stuck with players like Matthew Screech instead, which isn't ideal, really. I mean, no, I'm being harsh. I like Matthew Screech, but you know what I mean. We haven't got that world class.
The Screech is not a replacement for Will Rowland, though, is he?
No, absolutely not.
He's a perfectly good second row forward, but he is URC, a decent URC player, and Will Rowland, like Tom suggested, is above international class for me. If he didn't make the Lions squad, I would be very surprised.
Yeah, okay. Another question. And speaking of the box sprays, we got one from the Ospreys Irie podcast. They're saying, how realistic is a home win against the Ospreys in 2 weeks? The answer is very, because we actually have a very good record against Ospreys at home. Would you agree, Gav?
Yeah. And, kind of our friend, well, I would say our friends in Swansea, but Ospreys fans live everywhere in Wales, don't they? Because they all kind of started doing it during that Galacticos period. But to say our friends in Swansea, I don't think they're very good.
Come on, Gav. They've had a good start to the season. I mean, it was that first half against Connacht, wasn't it? They were completely blown. To be fair, they beat the Sharks.
They beat the Sharks.
Right. In London.
Yeah, the Sharks, I think it's a bit like the club I play for. The Sharks were a bit like me on a Friday night when you say no, X isn't available, and you ringing up blokes you vaguely know can play a bit of rugby. That's what the Sharks look like they've done. I'm assuming they were wandering around the pubs of Durban collecting some players on the Thursday evening. Because, it wasn't a very good Sharks team, was it? It was a perfectly functional team, but it wasn't very good.
They're a very strange team, the Sharks, though, aren't they? Because when you look at this squad, even when they haven't got the Springbok players available, they've actually got a really good squad. But they're very underwhelming, aren't they? They very rarely perform. I mean, this is how bad they were last season. I mean, Cardiff went out there and nilled them at home. They got nilled by Cardiff. Let that sink in. Their head coach, Sean Everett, got sacked, and he's now ended up in Edinburgh. Yeah. He's now Edinburgh's head coach. So, they're a strange team, the Sharks, aren't they? But listen, Dragons haven't beaten Sharks, so, I'm not saying too much about this. So, what do you reckon, Tom? Home win against the Ospreys for Dragons? That's doable.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, Ospreys, like there's a bit of an on-running, nothing against the Ospreys, but there's a bit of an on-running joke in our. We do a Super Brew and over in Harpin on Rugby, and you just never trust the pesky birds, because no matter if you back them to win, they'll lose, and that's the joke, the pesky birds, because if you back them to win, they'll lose, and if everyone shouts or puts a win down for the opposition, they just seem to pull a result out, which basically tells me they're a hugely inconsistent team. You really don't know from week to week what sort of team the Ospreys how they're going to turn up. You couldn't. They're the worst team to bet on, I think. They're so inconsistent. They can surprise you with results, and they can be absolutely awful the next week. And that's been the Ospreys for a few years.
Yeah, and they got Glasgow this weekend in Swansea, and that's going to be very interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah.
But I actually tipped Scarlets to be the best Welsh team this season. I think it might actually be Ospreys now. Now, I know it's only 3 rounds gone, so I shouldn't, put all my eggs in one basket. But I don't know. I got a feeling about the Ospreys.
I still think we can beat them, though. I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek, clearly. But, they aren't in the... we talked about this before. There are tiers in the URC, and Ospreys are probably bottom of the second tier in my head, and we're probably near the bottom of the third tier. But, they aren't in the same class as Leinster, Munster, particularly when those sides are in, kind of fully functioning Death Star kind of mode, like kind of, if you think of the best 15 players Leinster can put out and the best 15 player Ospreys can put out, there isn't a comparison for me.
No, okay. Another question then coming in from Yestin. Do you think we have a lot of good youth players coming through for the future? Now, I'm not sure if he's on about Welsh Rugby in general, the Dragons. Let's just assume it is the Dragons. So if you want to bring up any other Welsh Rugby players, that's fine. What do you think then, Gav? Are you happy with the youth that we got coming through the system with the Dragons?
Yeah, yes. My fear is a bit, though, that we are just going to keep having to blood them like we've had to recently, and they're going to learn bad habits, not playing habits, but that psychological habits that Tom talked about.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And you've played rugby, Tom has played rugby, I've played rugby, and there's not many things worse than being on the end of a 70-80 point shooting. Not even beer tastes good after one of those, and that's the problem, isn't it? And if we're on the end of heavy, and someone like Will Reid, if we are relying on Will Reid, who I think is a good player, I have said is a good player on a number of occasions, and we're relying on Will Reid, and we play a Leinster team that has all their international back rowers in, he is not going to have a very nice time.
No, but I think that's exactly what's going to happen this weekend, though.
It's exactly what's going to happen.
Given the injury update, which I'll talk about later. Okay, so I would say yes, we definitely got some really talented young players. I mean, you look at the ones involved in the Munster game, for example. You had Will Reid, Ryan Woodman, Luke Yendall, Ewan Rosser, Nathan Evans, our friend Barney Langton-Cryer, and then we got the likes of Bodie Coughlin, who I really like. I think he's a good old school hooker, and Ivan Owen, George Young, David Richards, Joe Westwood is one to watch out for. In the centre, he's very good for Wales under-20s, and Harry Ackerman as well. So yeah, we got some really good young talent, but we do want them in an environment that's a bit more successful, don't we? I think that's the concern, isn't it? You want them to be in a thriving, stable environment, and one that's winning more regularly. So yeah. So let's move on then to Aled up in North Wales. Now he wants to know, what positions do Wales need numbers in, and what Dragons players could fill those positions. So, for example, you say, could Rodri come in at 9, Will Reid in at 10? What do you think? Have Will Reid in at 10? But the thing is, you talk about Will Reid, he was actually name checked by Ron Gatland, mind.
I think in
10.
2 or 3 years, yes. Right, in 2 or 3 years, yes. Not right now.
He's not ready, is he? He's not
ready.
I
do kind of, for what is largely an audio medium, you can't see me kind of resting my head in my hands a little bit here. No, I don't. Right now, the gaps that Wales have, I don't think the Dragons are filling them. Fullback.
Kai Evans, Scobie. What, fly half, it looks like?
Well, yeah, I think Kai Evans is being slotted into fly half, I've said he's a 10 in my head, so, whether he's Welsh 10 yet is another thing entirely. In terms of other, but I don't want anyone else to fall back. No, we have no one there. The centres, none of, one of our centres is a New Zealander, so, he's unlikely to play for Wales, but. And then our other centres, I love Steph, but he's not in national centre.
No.
Tight dead. Maybe Lloyd got a couple of caps in him.
Yeah, he could be one. We'll have to see how that goes. We'll talk about Lloyd in a little bit, but Aaron Wainwright, he can nail down that 8 position now, because Toby Faletau, he's no spring chicken anymore. There's injuries to consider as well.
Oh, I think Aaron's in that Welsh back row, whatever now. He's there through to the next World Cup.
Yeah. And Tom, let's just talk about Welsh mix. I know you keep a close eye on Welsh rugby over there in the Irish Sea. Where do you think the problem positions are for Wales going forward? Because we've had a lot of retirements, as you know. Gatland said he is going to have to rebuild. Where do you think the positions are key now for Wales, where they got to start rebuilding and giving more opportunities, do you think?
Yeah, I think Wales are all, just like they showed in the World Cup, even though I think the Argentina game ultimately was a bit of a letdown. Wales, the environment most of the Welsh players come from, and when you listen to the Welsh media, it's like, if I use Manchester United as a bit of an example, there's so much negativity about Manchester United at the moment that it does permeate itself onto the pitch. And the regions have had that for 20 years, and it does affect, I don't care what anyone says, it does affect a certain percent of their sort of what they do when they go out onto the pitch. Because, the whole, there's the lack of buoyancy around it, and there's always a negative story or negative twist. The Ospreys tried to do something different, and 90% of it was like, this is terrible. This is going to London, and totally negative. It's a negative go-to. I suppose the reason I'm mentioning all that is because once the players come out of the camps into Wales, it does take a while, and Wales are a team that get better the longer they are together, and they definitely always punch more above their weight collectively. But you're looking at, because they're in a more positive camp, there's a better buzz around Welsh rugby, the national team, fuller houses and all that. So they're still the same players. They're still the same players that play for their clubs and regions, but yet people say Gatland is the magic man at the end, but it's not. It's the environment they're going into. There's a bit of a winning culture, and so therefore they always play better when they're out of the regions, because the negativity lifts a good lot, and there's more belief that they can win. If you ask any Cardiff fan, we have a game this weekend between our own clubs, and you say, do you think the Dragons are going to beat Leinster? And you did a poll, it might be 95% 5, but I guarantee if it was Wales and Ireland with a lot of the same players, it would be nowhere near that. And so therefore it's there's always a collective belief in Wales that they can, when they get together, they can bridge that sort of gap. And the gap is inflated because we're looking at the provinces versus the regions in Ireland and Wales, for the reasons I've outlined. So, but look, I think the key for Wales is, the last few years in their 20s have been very hit and miss, and that's when WRU have really let that down. That's been poor, and they're now relying on the clubs to sort of make those players better. We mentioned Woodman, how well he played. There's a guy that I'd love to have him at Leinster, because I could see Rhys Ruddock Mark II coming out of him. That's the quality I see of a guy that could play a couple 100 times for a province. So it's up to the WRU to get the likes of him and bring him on from a really sort of quality underage player that he can make a big impact at international level. So it's that overall, I don't know whose role it is within the WRU to sort of elite player management and take the likes of those guys. I think that's the biggest issue for Wales rather than individual. I think there's a lot of talent there, but it's getting that talent and bringing them on to the next level, giving them the tools to do it, rather than just forgetting about them as soon as the Barbaz game. They'll come back to their clubs and they're gone, and they're not working on their development, or just leaving it up to the regions and their sort of budgets. Doesn't give the chance to these players to go on to the next level. It's one hand behind your back all the time, and then they'll call them up again in February or whatever for the Six Nations. They'll and then it's the same. So it's that overall elite player management and recognizing the talent that's there. Then all of a sudden there's more depth, because you're taking quality underage players and adding to them constantly, and then you've got an end product. And if Faletau gets injured, and you can have a guy that's nearly ready to step in his shoes, rather than, God, who's next? So I think it's an overall umbrella thing from WRU trying to deal with the sort of elite players and spot that young talent.
Can I ask you a question, absolutely, Tom? So Leinster, what did Leinster do with those young guys who are on the fringes of the province side but aren't going to regularly play? How do they make sure those players are being developed? So because Leinster appeared on Blood and Mud, they talk about the secret underground lab underneath RDS where they clone back rows. But as much as it's a joke, it does feel like that. It's who's this bloke I've never seen? Oh, he's really good. So how are Leinster doing that?
Well, I think first of all, because I'm involved in, Leinster's divided into regions itself. So I live in the sort of northeast of Leinster, and when you're a kid playing for your club, you start playing for your northeast of Leinster, or if it's Dublin, it's Metro, or if it's southeast, if it's down in Wexford across from the Welsh Sea and stuff like that. So you start off there, and you at under 16 level, and you're playing for Leinster, and it's just the money where people always look at Leinster's budget and go, where have they spent money? Where the biggest spend, not the biggest spend, but Leinster have thrown a lot of money at coaches, all the way from those regional coaches at under 16, all the way through 17s, 18s, and 19s, when they merge with the guys coming out of the private schools. And you sort of get the best of the best, but it's the coaching all the way up. And they're constantly playing for Leinster. They're wearing the exact same jersey as the guys do. So all of a sudden, it's more than just, you're playing for, people say, of course they'll move on if they're not getting paid properly. I'm not saying they're playing for their province. But if there is a thing in Leinster where you're able to hold on to them a bit better because it's their jersey, it is their province. I know that sounds like a cliche. I'm sure somebody listening might go, well, they still have to get fucking paid, Tom. And that is true. That is right. They're not paid for peanuts. But
No.
it's instilled from them at a young age that this is their province and this they play in blue and from that. So therefore, but it's the coaching at those levels. You know, I've often been to seminars where the coaches, as in I'm a club coach, we're taught the Leinster way. So whatever the latest thing is and how to present a ball at the back of a rock, whatever way they're working at, you see James Ryan or Josh van der Fleer, whatever way they've been taught by Lancaster, now he's gone, or whoever Sean O'Brien is now coaching, and you have Nienbar going to come in. But whatever way they're coaching, that filters down through the regions within Leinster and even right down to the clubs. So even a guy that I could be coaching who's 15 is maybe not good enough to make his Northeast team or or regional. He's still been taught the Leinster way. So when they do have to step in, it's a bit more seamless. Do you know what I mean? So it's not just how can I say? It's not just a theory, it's a practice that's done and has been done for a good long time. It's not something that, I'm supporting Leinster 30 years. I remember, 2 sheepdog and a couple of guys in Donnybrook, 3,000 going to games. So, I can see, so you can, people say the money, and it is, Leinster do throw money at it now, but the money used to be there. But what they did recognize earlier on was it's the coaching through all the different levels. So if you're asking me how we keep guys happy, I think that it's ownership of the jersey. It's their club, it's their province, but also it's the level of coaching they're getting from 16 upwards that makes it a little bit more seamless when you see the teams that we've played. We played Glasgow, and then we obviously played the Sharks. We played Edinburgh last week. Guys stepping in straight from under 20s, but they've been playing the Leinster way again. And put my commas up there from 4, 5, 6 years already.
No, it's interesting. And I actually think that me and Gav talked about this. I think that's part of the problem in Welsh rugby. I don't think the coaching is good enough. Right through for the grassroots, right up to the pro game, Gav. You would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Oh, 100%. It's and I know lots of the coaches in Ireland aren't Irish, who coaching the regions, coaching the wherever. But there are lots of coaches being developed, and there are lots of Irish coaches. And if you said to me, "Oh, can you name some coming through Welsh coaches?" I would be scratching about.
Yeah.
Well, in answer to your question, sorry for putting across you, Gav. One of your listeners asked a question earlier on: would you like a world-class 10 or a world-class lock? Well, if you ask me, 7 days a week and 8 times, twice on Sunday, world-class coach. First, second, fourth.
Well, we talk about this every week.
He lifts all boats.
We talk about this every week, and I would love a defensive coach. I would just like somebody who's going to drill the Dragons in whatever defensive style they want. I like the Sean Edwards kind of rugby league kind of drift defense rather than the kind of blitz defense. But if somebody came to me and just got our players to run a defensive system consistently and accurately, I wouldn't care.
Yeah, it's really frustrating today when we missed out on Mark Jones. He's gone to the Ospreys. We couldn't get Gethin Jenkins. He's gone to Cardiff, albeit on a part-time basis. We got Sam Hobbs from the academy, and it's like, all the best to Sam Hobbs. I'm sure he is a good coach, but it's not quite the same. You want someone with pedigree, don't you, and experience in those coaching and those key coaching positions. But okay, one more question before we move on. This is one for you, Gav. You'll like this one. Daniel Green. We should play Ryan Woodman more often at 6, much more dynamic. Agree or disagree?
Well, playing an actual 6 at 6, yeah. Let's do this revolutionary idea. Eddie Jones is not a good man, so let's not be following his thing of, if I have a second row playing at 6, will it bring physicality? No, what you'll have is a second row at 6. And that's, and you can look at Courtney Laws. Yeah, all due respect to George Knott, he is not Courtney Laws.
I mean, Tag Byrne does it pretty well as well, in fairness. Like, there are plenty of locks who can slot into that blindside role, isn't there,
They are. Well, no, I don't think there's plenty. I think there's some. Ty Byrne, definitely.
Okay,
Ty Byrne, definitely. Laws, yes. I don't think Itoje ever looks convincing at 6. I think.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Scott
Yeah.
Barrett from New Zealand, maybe as
No.
well. But
Yeah.
Robert Blair, it's the exception rather than the rule.
Oh, hugely.
Yes.
You just lose, you lose a bit of dynamism. If you want to play a narrow game down to the 50 meters of the pitch, I think you can go big at 6. It's an overall game plan, but for Dragons, no, I don't see the logic in it because they want to get to the outside edge a lot better, quicker, and you know they don't be playing the game in the middle part of the pitch. But with the sort of talent and the players that they have there, it's just not their strong point. You're trying to make something work that they don't have the players up front to carry out.
And I understand why Di Flanagan does it, because he's, we aren't a hugely physical back row. Tane's not big, Aaron Wainwright's not big. But I don't, second rows have a very specific job, and they end up being neither here nor there. George Knott doesn't hit enough rucks for me, and that's what you want from a second row. And I just think, Woodman is the obvious choice. He's athletic, and we've done it before at Dragons. Harry Keddy, we dropped into first team rugby very young. He was captain in the side when he was very young. He comes straight off the back of playing for Ebervale. I don't understand it, but then I'm not paid to coach the club. I just talk about it.
In case you haven't noticed, Tom, Gav is not a fan of having second rows in the back row, and it is a very Dragons thing. We've done it with George Knott, we do it with Sean Lonsdale, we have done in the past with Matthew Screech. We used to do it with Corey Hill when he's with us, and Gavin does not like that at all, do you? You want a proper blind side.
Square pegs, square holes.
Okay, fair enough. Right then, let's have a quick mention about the Wales Barbars game, the much maligned Wales Barbars game. I mean, in fairness, it got a very good crowd, didn't it? Because the WRU were very coy on ticket sales. They weren't giving any information away, but they got over 55,000, I think it was. So Wales said farewell to Halloween Jones, Justin Tippett and Lee Halfpenny with a 49-26 victory over the Barbarians at the Prince Paddy Stadium. I had no interest in this game whatsoever until I found out Lloyd Fairbrother had been called up. So I watched the first 60 minutes. I watched it late on a Saturday night, and I won't lie, I fell asleep. And then I watched the highlights later. And from what I saw, Lloyd Fairbrother actually went really well. He had a solid 53 minutes, and he did well going up against former All Blacks Luced Joe Moody. You saw the game, Gav. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I thought Lloyd had a really good game. He isn't the kind of prop that Gatland likes. Gatland likes a lad who's going to get round the field and do all that stuff. But I think what he did was what Thomas Francis does, which is he held his end up at the scrum, which is, for me, the first job of a tight end. If a tight end
you
can't
like
do that,
scrummager can scrum, can't you? That's your number one rule.
if a tight end can't scrummage, they aren't a tight end. And but he also hit a number of rucks. He was quite, there was one point where he got smashed in the face at a ruck as well. And I was calling for a red card, and kind of some people suggesting not in the spirit of the Barbars, but but no, I thought he did lots of unseen work very, very well.
Absolutely, and I was reading his interviews as well. And I listened to the Scrum 5 pod. They were from Astramanak, and he interviewed him. He was very emotional after that game. It meant a lot to him. It wasn't a capped fixture,
no.
But it meant a lot to him. He had his family down, his mum. He's had really sad time of it of late. So he lost his brother to cancer. I think it was 2017. And then last year he lost his sister to cancer as well. So he's had a really tough time of it lately. And he was talking about when he had his mum on the pitch, he just asked security, could he have his mum just on the field? And they come on the field, he had a bit of a cry. And he said he's desperate to, get back in the red of Wales, and how much he enjoyed it, how emotional it was for him. And I just thought it was really nice, and I know we rubbished this game, and for me, it was always about the timing rather than the game itself, because Wales Barbarians games, they are quite common. But it's meant a lot to him, and I'm really pleased he had a good game. And it's a lovely story with Lloyd, so I'm glad. I'm really pleased for him.
His mum's from Blaenavon, isn't she? Because he's Cornish, isn't he, by birth?
That's right.
But his mum's from Blaenavon, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Eastern Valley's boys, always good scrummagers.
Yes, he's been a solid pro for the Dragons for a long time. Now, I have to admit, I never saw him as an international. That's no slight on Lloyd, but there's those players, and Tom mentioned earlier with Gavin, because you just know some players are solid club pros, and there's something to be said for that. for being a solid club pro. But we wait and see. Maybe he will get a call up for Wales now. And he did his chances no harm. I thought he played well. I did, to be fair to him.
It was a bloody silly game, but he was
Yeah.
a very serious element in quite a silly game.
Yeah.
It's the greatest example of it. So I'd go and collect my son from a birthday party. So after Kieran Hardy scored in the 79th minute and 46 second, I thought, well, there's no more tries there.
No.
And
But
he scored another try directly after that with 12. So it was a very silly game.
It was. But it's all we're done with now. And we move on to some bad news, I'm afraid. So we got an injury update for you that came out today from Dave Flanagan. So we talked about Angus O'Brien going off against Munster. He's going to be out for at least 8 weeks due to a broken arm. And that leaves Will Reid as our only specialist option at 10, with Kai Evans backing him up. And look, it was always going to be a gamble, wasn't it, going into the season with just O'Brien and Reid as our frontline 10s and Kai Evans as cover. But it's bad news, Gav, isn't it? Because Angus is a key player for us.
Yeah, well, and it takes away options, doesn't it? Because there's no rotation there. For the next 2-3 months, they're going to have to be the 10s options every single game. And there will be games we'll want to rotate, but we won't be able to because there's no rotation. Unless we draw someone up from, we've taken Will from Newport, haven't we? So I don't know what's there, really, elsewhere in the region.
My concern is if O'Brien's injured and Wales call up, let's just say they do call up Will Reid, or if only into the camp, because they do that, and they do call up young players just to, get that experience in camp. Kai Evans, Will Reid not available, O'Brien injured, who's out 10 then, and there's talk
Thomas
about Jordan Williams. No, I meant for the Dragons. I know.
I was being flippant about the whole Thomas Williams at 10 thing.
Oh, don't go there, because that's just a silly suggestion. So Jordan Williams, Steph Hughes, and Iron Owen are Dragons' emergency options for 10. But I mean, at least the Iron Owen has played 10, because he played 10 at schoolboy level. So I don't know why that hasn't been explored more, if I'm being honest. But it's not the news we wanted. And then Leon Brown and Rodrigo Martinez, they have calf injuries. We don't know when they're going to come back. And of course, Ollie Griffiths is injured, isn't he? He's struggling with a knock. I mean,
also Leon Brown in the same breath, it's
we love those
lost
guys,
as
don't
Leon
we?
Brown injured,
I know, as much as we like Leon Brown, we love Ollie Griffiths, but I mean, it's just, you're never going to get a full season out of these guys. We keep re-signing them, and we're not getting it. Are we really getting value for money?
I think with Leon Brown, I think it's this idea, potential. There comes a point when you can't talk about potential anymore because you're beyond that point, and I think he might be on that point.
What do you make of Leon Brown, Tom?
Yeah, I first time I seen him, actually, it was over in Newport. We played. It was the first time you got the new pitch down.
Oh yeah,
we played in the first game of the season. Cracking sunny day, like the sun was absolutely the one day a year, like Ireland, that the sun was splitting the stones in Newport. And I remember he came on, and I was impressed with him. I know Leinster's team generally in the first game mightn't be the full strength, but he definitely gave problems to the scrum, and I thought, fair enough, this guy could be one to watch. But he sort of plateaued out a bit. But harking back to what I just said, half an hour ago, just this thing with WRU taking somebody like him as an example and not developing him with good coaching and just calling him when they need him, thrown back to the regions when they don't, and in some ways they're half expecting him to turn up as an international prop and then realize when he's not, that's about a bit of surprise when they have not been doing anything in the interim. So that's he sort of backs up what I sort of think about how players are left plateau out in their careers, because he definitely looked like a guy that he had a bit of pace, that open field pace. He was aggressive. He was a good carrier, and he was bulky. And he's just plateaued out. His career is leveled off, and it sort of just maybe echoes what I was trying to say earlier on.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Leon Brown, I am, and I'm desperate for him to kick on, but I'm just worried he's never going to fulfill his potential because of the injuries. And then when he is fit, what really annoys me, and I know this annoys Gav as well, he's fit, gets called up to Wales. So we
Yeah.
don't see him. And then he comes back to us, he's injured. It's like, oh, it's really, really frustrating, isn't it? So yeah, not good news there from the injury front, I'm afraid. Okay, so Tom, let's talk Leinster then. Let's talk Leinster. So Leinster lost away to Glasgow in the first round. I didn't see that coming, but fair play, Glasgow are a good team, in fairness to them. But you quickly got back to winning ways. You had a bonus point win over the Sharks and a bonus point win over Edinburgh at the RDS. So given what you've seen so far, what's been your thoughts on Leinster's start to the season?
One thing Leinster always do every year is they'll take blocks of 4 games and they'll stick with the same team. So you're going to see a similar team against the Dragons. I know the team's not announced yet, but you're going to see a similar team just to give that cohesion and consistency. There might 1 or 2 might come in. There's talk of Ryan Baird or the likes of Joe McCarthy, who are sort of fringe in the World Cup, maybe coming into the 23, or maybe one of them starting. But Leinster tend to do that, and then they'll park that and they'll look at the next block of 4 games. I think starting with the Scarlets and Munster, and then on to Connacht, and then on to the first game of the URC or the Champions Cup. They'll take that block of 4 or 5 and play a similar team, and that's what Cullen has done since 2016, 2017, or since he took over, and it does seem to work. Leinster do tend to get better over that group period, so I wasn't surprised. I was at one of the pre-season games we played against Ulster, and it looked a little bit of lack of cohesion. They are trying a different system in defence. From my knowledge of looking at it, so there seem to be a lot of gaping holes in midfield defence. Leinster traditionally would only put 1 or 2 in at a ruck and spread 13 defenders, and then wait for that 4th or 5th phase for you to make an error, or then target the ruck when either the opposition ran out of numbers. But this year they're aggressively going after the initial ruck. Maybe that's in mind with bigger tests later on in the season where we've sort of fallen short against maybe a big French or South African team. I don't think they're going to throw all the baby out with the bathwater. There's not a whole lot wrong. When you lose by a point in the Champions Cup, it's not completely wrong, but it's interesting to see from this early season. So I wasn't surprised it was a bit all over the shop against a good Glasgow team, or hard to beat over there. It's been good from a point of view. There's a good few players that have come from the Irish under-20 team that won the Slam this year and got to the World Cup final against France, even though they were well beaten. A few of those guys have come through into the 23, and as you mentioned earlier on, the performances against the Sharks and against Edinburgh, and it was a good Edinburgh team. There was a lot of the Scottish internationals back, and Edinburgh, one of those teams, on paper they look great, but they just don't play as a team. And again, this might be the coaching rather than anything else. If you harpen back to coaching. It's good. I think this is sort of the end of the first group of games, the way Leinster look at it, and they'll obviously be trying their best to win over in Newport the weekend.
Yeah, so when does Jackson Eambar start his official role as Leinster head coach? Do you know?
That is a good question. We don't know yet.
Okay.
Again, reading between the lines, I looking at the way Leinster are starting to defend and attack rucks in a different way to last year, just from my own, because I look at them so much. I wouldn't be surprised if he's been on, calls already with the rest of the coaches, and give an idea, but pretty soon, like I suppose when you see Khaleesi arriving in Racing to play this weekend, well then there's no reason Jackson Eambar shouldn't be in Leinster, considering he was the one on the pitch. So I think you'd see him, maybe for the Scarlets game. But we were missing Andrew Goodman, who's our backs coach. He had a contract and he was with Samoa for the World Cup, so we were missing him for all the preseason. Well, he replaced Contepomi last year. Goodman was with the Crusaders as the backs coach, and again, you're talking about getting quality coaches. You're picking up a coach who was the backs coach for the Crusaders, probably one of the most attacking nous teams in rugby. Goodman did play for us, in the middle of the noughties, so he had a tie with Leinster, and I think one of his kids is in school up here, goes to university. So, but it's keeping those links and getting quality players, coaches like that is, but Goodman was missing. So I'm not surprised it's been a little bit haphazard, I'd say, given the change in the way we're slightly playing. No Nienbar, Goodman's only back, and with Lancaster gone and stuff, I wasn't a whole lot surprised that we struggled a little bit against Glasgow, especially when I think 4 of our props were 20, or 3 of the 4 props were 20 years of age, which is a big ask when you're at that position, no matter how good you are.
Are we going to see a full Leinster team at Newport, or is this going to be kind of transitional?
No, I think if you going back to just what I said, I think Leinster tend to take blocks of games, and this will be, if you look at the 15 they played against Edinburgh, against Sharks, it's going to be quite similar. Okay. 1 or 2 I'd stay back in. There's talk of Rossburn maybe coming back in. Baird, I'd say if you look at the 23 that played against Edinburgh, I'd say 20 of those are going to be there again.
Okay.
Maybe with a change of 3, and then they'll look at the next group of games. Then, I think we play Munster at home. We sort of owe them one, so you're going to see a lot more out against that, and that'll lead into the Connacht game away before we play La Rochelle away. So they'll be getting the Irish guys back in over those next 3 games to hit La Rochelle, and then hopefully hit Sale before Christmas in the Heineken Cup. And yeah, that's the way they tend to do it every year. So I'd say same as. It won't be any disrespect to Dragons. Sometimes people look and go, oh, why don't they put out more? It's just the way Cullen and the team do it. They believe firmly, and the results, I suppose, are there to show that if you play, even though the names mightn't jump out on the page to a lot of non-Leinster fans, but if you keep playing them together in groups and you say these are your 4 games or these are your 5 games, they tend to give you the results. As we only lost once last year in the regular season. I know we drew 1 as well, but these guys are still getting those results throughout the season because you're sort of looking for a block of games.
I'm honest. I'll be honest. I'm quite pleased that we're not in kind of fully operational Death Star mode yet. Then, because I could do without that right now. I don't think for 1 second we'll beat Leinster, wherever Leinster side comes across, particularly with the injury crisis we facing. No. But I'd like it to be competitive.
Yeah, we'll discuss that later on, because we'll do our quick preview at the end. But just before we move on, some Leinster news as well, Tom, that came out today. Gary Ringrose and James Ryan have been announced as Leinster co-captains. What's your reaction to that? Good choices?
Yeah, it's a weird. I suppose the co-captain's an interest, maybe one for the backs and one for the forwards. I don't. It's no real surprise. Sexton didn't play any minutes in the Heineken Cup last year, just with injury. And Ringrose and Ryan sort of took that mantle on anyway. So in some ways, they're announcing old news to a certain degree. Yeah, it's no surprise. Ryan, even though there's always outside of maybe Ireland, he's not as appreciated as much, but we find him valuable. Him going off in the Heineken Cup final after 25 minutes with concussion was, and we've seen that before. He's fundamental to the way Leinster play. He's never going to be the guy that's going to be making the amazing breaks, but Leinster try that sub 3 second clear out of the rucks or getting the ball away under 3 seconds, and a lot of the times it's the likes of him or Porter that does the donkey work to allow that presentation of ball, and he is key to Leinster in the way we play. The way he plays suits us.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Okay then, so now it's time for Gav's Gwent Rugby Roundup. What have you got for us this week then, Gav? What's been happening?
So the weather going away a bit, so Penaltha's game was postponed and various other games were postponed, but there was lots of Gwent teams playing. So last Thursday, on what my friend described as an absolutely horrific night for weather, Pontypool beat Ebervale 25-20. So in terms of the Premiership, Llandovery are now top, but within 4 points, Newport, Pontypool and Ebervale all top of the Premiership, and they've been absolutely acres of space between 4th place Ebervale and 5th place Cardiff. So Gwent teams are dominating the Premiership at the minute. In the Championship, a few games took place. Cross Keys beat St. Peter's 44-10 at home, and Newbridge beat Glamorgan Wanderers 45-20. Newbridge are 4th in the championship as well. So, kind of they're doing well there. So not many games in Division 1. Blaenavon lost 25-33 away to Bedlinog. No, I'm convinced Bedlinog is a fictional place. I'm not convinced it actually exists. Even though I've been there, I'm still convinced it's fictional. It's like Brigadoon. And Monmouth beat Risca 25-19. So in Division 1 East, Bryn Mawr top, Talwyn second, and Annistia third. So lots of Gwent representation there. And then going down the leagues, Division 2 East, Abdlary, Blaenau Gwent are top, and Newport High School Old Boys are second. Mainly Gwent teams, so there is a lot of, there will be Gwent teams there, but I think of the 10 teams, 9 are Gwent teams. But, Abdlary, Blaenau Gwent have started very well, and, a team that I can remember producing internationals when I was a child, which is a while ago now, but, nice to see him rising back up. Division 3 Abercarn are top from Rumney. I have a friend who plays for Rumney, so they're good to see those near the top. And then Division 4 Crumlin are top from Newport Saracens. Saracens have started very well, but Crumlin are grinding out the results. And I don't know if you've ever played a Crumlin.
I have.
Jamie, it's not a nice place to play.
No, it's not.
It's down in that valley, and the weather just seems to hang there. It's quite grim. And then in Division 5, Pondland Fife are top. They've started very well, unbeaten. And in Division 6, I'm very nice to be able to say so. They've only played 3 games so far, but Tredegar Ironside's top, unbeaten. My dad kind of fluctuated between Tredegar main side and Ironsides for most of his career. So it's nice to see one of his old sides doing well. So, I think Gwent Rugby at the minute, we talked about the grassroots kind of drain and sides like Trevel and Tredegar not putting sides out anymore. But, the Newport particularly seems to be hitting a rich kind of, there's lots of good clubs in Newport, from Talwyn and Whiteheads, HSOB, all these sides, Saracens, Bedwas, lots of, so Newport seems to be doing well. And there are strong teams in the valleys as well, kind of Pondland Fife, Adlary, all doing solidly. Yeah. So, I think we're in a good position at the minute. I'll still say if anyone's listening who are involved in a community club who wants to come on, that would be great. We want to talk about our clubs, it's not purely Dragons here. And, I'm a massive advocate of Valleys Rugby, as are you, Jamie. So, the more we can get on.
No, of course, Gwent Rugby is doing really well this season, isn't it? Going through the divisions, how many Gwent clubs you were saying there at top or in the top 4? It's really good to see, isn't it? I quite like that.
Absolutely. I think our sides are struggling a bit in the championship, but Newbridge are holding their own. But in the Premiership, kind of, and Llandovery have lots of Scarlets players in that setup, kind of, and it's not so much the case at Newport and Pontypool Neville. The issue is the elite competition, which looks like it's going to not work because the Cardiff region clubs are all saying, no, thank you.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that one, won't we? So thank you for that, Gav, for that roundup. Right then, let's preview the big one on the weekend, on Sunday. Dragons versus Leinster. Now, just to say, before we go into the game, just want to remind people that if you are travelling to this game by car, be advised that there are going to be road closures in place from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. And this is because of Newport's annual Remembrance Parade and service in the city centre. So if you go on the Dragons website, it gives you a list as long as your arm of all the roads that are closed in the area. So just to be aware, if you are travelling to the game by car, there are roads that's going to be closed for the parade. So just check Newport City Council or the Dragons website for further information. So we got Leinster. Now, I was watching Scrum 5 on the weekend, and Jamie Roberts said Leinster is the perfect game for the Dragons next because it'll sharpen minds. And I read an article this week from Chris Kerwin in the South Wales Argus, and he also said that this is a perfect game for the Dragons. Now, I don't know about you, but when you're searching for a win, the last team I want to be playing is Leinster, to be quite honest with you. Can you see the viewpoint here, either of you? Why is this the perfect game for Dragons? Can you understand what Jamie Roberts is on about there? Any of them?
I think
well,
we think a little bit of this, what we spoke about earlier on about the Dragons against Edinburgh, especially, and a little bit against in patches against Munster. That sort of absolute desperation to get a win, you know, and a slight bit of panic and composure. In some ways, that pressure has taken them off against Leinster. It doesn't mean like they've thrown the game, but in some ways, you know, there is a little bit of pressure off from externally.
Yeah.
Whatever pressure they put on themselves to perform, but externally, there won't be the same pressure. It doesn't mean it sounds a bit disrespectful to say the team have got a pass for the weekend, whether they win, lose, or draw. But sometimes taking that external pressure off the media, supporters, gives them a little bit more freedom and a little bit less pressure off, because it does. I think it does affect the team, and it permeates onto the players on the pitch. So maybe that's what he means. I don't know. Maybe that's what he means by.
Okay.
I think it's a challenge, isn't it? And I've, kind of, you always learn more by the tougher games than you do by the games you win 65-0 or whatever. But I don't know. This isn't a particularly resilient side, and Leinster are a machine. It's what's that thing in Star Trek? The Borg. Leinster are the Borg, aren't they? They're this huge glowering beast that just swallows everything else up. I'm not trying to denigrate your team, Tom, but it's just the way it looks like when you support one of the lesser sides, I suppose. And Tom, seriously, where is Leinster's ambition this year? It's our 5th star, isn't it? That's the ambition, isn't it?
Yeah, ultimately, yeah. Like, I suppose the last 2 years have fallen short in the last minute, basically. Point and then a couple of points then in Marseille.
Yeah.
On the league, though, in fairness to, people might say, look at the Leinster selection and go, did they take the league serious? I think they do. I think they try to win it every year. They try to manage their squad over 2 competitions. Well, 3 really, if you include Ireland, because we still lose.
Yeah.
We still lose up to 20 players for the Six Nations in autumn. So it's managing the 3 competitions in both blue and green. But I think Leinster probably are one of the teams that can probably say they can try to win both as best they can. Like, we have no divine right to win both, as we've seen. In some ways, we've been the best team in Europe in the last 5 years without actually being the best team in Europe, because of the consistency. Winning 6 out of 6 in the pools, or when it was 6, or winning 4 out of 4 on the road in France, or whatever, winning all these games and then just ultimately falling short. So, it'll be interesting to see what Nienbar brings and what we'll do something slightly different. So there'll be a little bit of an evolution this year, but ultimately they'll still hope to be there, and expectation should be there, given the players that they have, that they should be there at the end of both competitions with a chance to win.
Do you think with him coming in that so South Africa play a very specific style? They're not possession hungry. They want the ball when it's in the opposition's half. They're not interested in playing lots of rugby in their own half. And Ireland play more kind of romantic rugby, not hugely so, but the more romantic rugby. Do you think Leinster might go down the route to South Africa? Do you think Leinster might start being less worried about holding on to the ball and using kicking more often and that kind of approach?
I'd sort of be surprised if that was the case. I think Nienbar obviously is a high quality coach, but I think at any level, whether you're in the Principality or the AIL or Ireland League, you work with who you have. South Africa have players to play a certain type of game.
Yeah,
I think Nienbar, it would be crazy if he tries to, I think anyway, replicate that sort of game plan, considering he has different weapons at his disposal at Leinster. Joe Smith played a completely different game for Ireland in his latter years than he did at Leinster with a lot of the same players, or some similar players. It was a lot more defensive and a lot more risk-free. We weren't offloading Where if you look at Leinster when we won a couple of Heineken Cups with Smith, it was champagne stuff basically. You know, it was like Toulouse and their pomp. So I think coaches adapt depending on what type of players they have, and I'd be surprised. I think he will bring more a hardened defense, maybe, or a different type of defense. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, you know, because we are sort of used to him before he was at Munster back in 2017 with Mad Rassi.
Rassi, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you know, so they had some success, but wasn't there long enough really to sort of implement a game plan. So it'd be interesting to see. I think in the South African two players, it'd be interesting to see James Lowe and Larmour and Jimmy O'Brien, who sort of are wingers. They might be a little bit more exposed under an Ian Bar system, because if you look at the South Africans, they tend to narrow up the pitch a lot and then rely on a lot of good scramble defence from those wingers. And it wouldn't be Leinster's strong point with the wingers that we have. So, you know, we could see times during where people are getting around the edge, on the edge, outside edge a lot, and oh my God, look, James Lowe's having a bad game. But I think it's more he could be one, for example, that could be a victim of the new system. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops as well.
Yeah. It's always the thing with a new coach, isn't it? You never know quite what's going to happen.
No, that's true. That's true. So here's a question for you, Tom. When was the last time Leinster lost to the Dragons? Can you name the year?
I know I didn't look up this now, so I'm just trying to guess now.
Have a guess.
I do know the Dragons beat us a couple, like 2 or 3 years in a row in the mid 2013, 14, 15, in and around that time. The Dragons had a series of good results in Newport against us. So I'm going to go 16.
You are correct. It was January 2016. Dragons 23, Leinster 13. I think you looked it up. I just think
it does sound like I looked
it up.
It does sound like I looked it up, but no, I genuinely didn't. I just remember there was a series of games. I took a pot in 16, but but there has been closer games. I think we only won. Was it a 3-0 game there? Well, there was a very in Newport last year, or the year before. Maybe it was under the COVID year.
It was close last year. It was a hideous game, but it was close.
It was hideous. Yeah, it was.
So in Newport in 2021, it was Dragons 29, Leinster 35. And that was the game where we could have actually gone for a win. But Sam Davis, if you remember, it was an awful pitch at the time. He was, cutting up and he kicked it out, didn't he? And there was a lot of criticism and saying, why didn't they go? Because, it looked like we had Leinster on the ropes, but I think the players were knackered and I think they were happy with the losing bonus point. And then in October that same year, but a different season, the new season, we lost to Leinster 7-6.
That was the one I was thinking about.
That's the game
it was a very, very tight game. And we never looked like winning that game. I was at that game. We never looked like beating Leinster. But what stuck out was the amount of pressure we put Leinster under, and they were making a lot of errors. Remember, you were knocking the ball on. It was missed kicks. They were rattled, but we never really looked like we were going to win. So, if you look at the last couple of games at Ronnie Parade, they've been pretty close. And you're just hoping, from a Dragons point of view, obviously, that it continues in that vein. But here's another interesting stat for you then, Tom. So Leinster have lost their last 2 away games in the Championship. You haven't lost 3 in a row since September 2016. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. No. So, so we won our last 2. Yeah. All right, I understand. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you've lost your last 2 away games carrying on from the season before. Then you lost in Glasgow, and you've now lost 3 in succession on the road since September 2016 in the league. So that'll be quite interesting when let's see. Well, can you imagine though if you lost to Dragons this weekend?
You're building this up for a Dragons win.
Oh God, I wish.
I don't think any amount of building up is going to have that impact. If I'm honest, Tom.
No, it's not. Okay, let's move on to predictions. Let's wrap it up. So, Gav, what's your prediction for this weekend? What's the damage going to be?
God, Leinster by 19.
Leinster by 19. Okay. No bonus point there, no try bonus point, no for
No,
Dragons though.
I'm gonna say it's going to be 27-8. Is that 19?
Okay.
No, that's 21. No, it is 19. Yeah, 27-8. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Come on then, Tom. Be honest. What do you think of this weekend?
Well,
How do you
I
see it
think
going?
Leinster, I think Leinster are going to cough up a lot more than 8 points against the Dragons. I think the way we're playing, we are leaking. Part of the issues of this transition to this new style. I think we are leaking points. So I can see the Dragons getting close to 20 points in this game, maybe more. I think it'd be interesting to see how many's back after their barbarian soiree. I think that would make a big difference. So I think Leinster probably win 28-22, something like that. It'll be quite a high scoring game. I can see the Dragons getting some bonus point, maybe a losing bonus point rather than a try bonus point. But I wouldn't be surprised if they got a try bonus point either. Especially if they can keep playing to the last 15 minutes, Leinster will definitely give them chances as a lot of our inexperienced forwards comes on, and maybe Dragons get a bit of a foothold. So yeah, 28-22.
Okay, that's interesting. I agree with what you said earlier, Tom. I think the pressure is off for the Dragons in this game because literally nobody thinks the Dragons are going to win this game, and that might suit us in some ways. We will have our Welsh internationals back. I expect them all to come back. We may get one or two on the bench, but I do expect this to be boosted by the Welsh internationals. I mean, we don't know what the teams are yet because we're recording this and the teams are out on Friday. The Leinster team is going to be strong, isn't it? No matter, I don't know how many Irish internationals. You don't think they're going to go full whack with the Irish internationals, no?
2 or 3 from fringe guys at this World Cup. That's it, I'd say max.
Okay. I mean, regardless, it's going to be strong. We know that. I said on the Rat Pod, Leinster by 15. And I'm going to stick to that, I think. I think Leinster by 2 scores. Yeah, around about 2 scores. But
so I'm either the most optimistic or most pessimistic here for the Dragons or Leinster, depending on what side of the fence.
You've not
well,
watched as much Dragons as us, Tom.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I think Tom is being kind. He doesn't want to upset us or offend us, so he's being very kind. I'm sure he thinks like Leinster by 30. That's what I reckon he thinks deep down.
But I understand that Patricia Vera from Rock and Roll and from the Munster pod suggested we were going to beat Leinster. I think that might be slightly Munster tinted glasses.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. But I just want to see a performance. Oh, you never know. Hey, who thought we'd beat Munster last season, mind? And they come down here. Let's remember, they lost to Cardiff in our first round. And then in the second round, then, because it was the Emerging Island tour at that time, then they started bringing back O'Mani and Tag Bird, and Zebo and all that. And we beat them. Weird things can happen. Stranger things can happen. It's not going to happen this weekend, but I'm just saying it could happen.
We'll beat Ospreys. I'm convinced of it.
I'm more confident about beating the Ospreys than I am Leinster, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Now, look, if this game was in the RDS, it's a complete write-off because we always get walloped at the RDS. But I don't know, with Ronnie Parade, I just feel like we can put a good performance in it and we can rattle Leinster. We're not going to beat them, but if we can rattle them, put in a bit of pressure, then I'd love to get some kind of it sounds defeatist to say this every single week. I feel like get a losing bones for it. But you know what I mean? We need something from it, don't we? Because if you look at Zebra, they're not winning games, but they're playing well, they're scoring tries, and they're picking up losing bonus points. Now, over the course of the season, they accumulate. And before you know it, if Dragons keep losing, mind, and they're not getting anything out of these games, and Zebra picking up points, before you know it, we'll be way behind them. So we got to start getting something from games, haven't we?
Yeah.
So there we are then. So we're all saying the Leinster win. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we knew that was coming, didn't we, in fairness? Okay. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Very knowledgeable bloke to have on. Where can people find you if they want to follow you on Twitter or X, as it's now known, whatever you want to call it?
Just on Twitter, Leinster Royalty, yeah. It's Royalty been the ancient Mead. Mead is the part of the province I'm from, which is like where the High Kings of Ireland used to. That's where the royalty comes in rather than anything from Buckingham Palace.
Is that Tara? I vaguely remember.
Gavin is showing off his Irish Celtic High King. Tara, yeah, you probably walk from my house to Tara. So it's a nod to when we had kings over here.
Yeah. my grandparents from the other side of Ireland are from Mayo, so I have some Irish knowledge. Or were.
Very impressive, Gav. Good stuff.
Oh,
That was
see,
impressive. Yeah, not just a pretty face.
My history degree has paid off finally after 30 years. I remember that bit about the High Kings of Ireland.
Oh, brilliant. Right, okay then. So I think we'll wrap it up for tonight. Now, don't forget, we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, X, however you want to call it. We're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So please subscribe, rate us, tell your Dragons mates about this because it really does help. Thank you both. It's been a pleasure. Cheers, Gav, as always. Thank you, Tom. And we shall talk next week where we won't be discussing the Dragons win, but we probably will look forward to the Ospreys game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Best of luck.
Okay. Absolutely. Take care, both. Goodbye now. Speak to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Dragons Lair podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question is, rugby is always the answer.
Sports Social Podcast Network.